welcome to another episode of the Odyssey Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Mullally, and our guest today, I'm a little nervous to introduce this person in the format of a podcast because he is himself a voiceover artist, a voice actor, voice coach, and he's also an audio producer who has quite successfully actually produced great podcasts. And I'd like to welcome him as well. So my guest is Angus Brennan. So Angus, welcome to the Odyssey Podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Jeremy. It's a pleasure to be here. How are you?
I'm not doing too bad, but I hope you'll be kind to me. Like I said, this is we're joking.
I'll be gentle.
Yeah, we're joking before we jumped on that. Yeah, I mean your audio might sound crisper than mine, which is probably not a good look for the host. But I hope people don't confuse who the host is, because that'd be very, very damaging to my ego.
I'm not going to get into voice coaching. I'm not going to critique your hosting skills, Jeremy, so don't worry.
Okay, if you keep those notes to yourself, that'll be appreciated.
Yeah.
But look, I'm sure people, when you tell them what you do as far as being those things, so being a voice artist and a voice coach, they'll have a sort of preconception of what that means. But could you just give us an idea of what that actually looks like, being first a voice artist, because that's your background, but then also a voice coach as well?
Yeah, of course. One of the most exciting things about doing what I do is being able to see the excitement in people's eyes when I say what I do. People are like, "What? Is that a real job?" It's always such a nice icebreaker when they're like, "Oh, what do you do?" I'm like, "I'm a voiceover artist." And they're like, "What?" So mostly what I do is commercial work. The majority of ads, if you listen to them on radio, are like a natural voice. So I guess that's what I do most of all. Then the voice coaching is something I picked up last year. And I guess it came because I'd reached a point where I'd become so comfortable doing the voice work myself that I wanted to give something back and teach people how they can themselves get into the industry. My philosophy is everyone has a voice and everyone can learn to use it effectively and become a voice artist themselves. So that's why I coach.
Right, and so the coaching, does it include not just the technical speaking abilities you need to have to be a voiceover artist, but also branching into, okay, like what kind of microphone do you use? How do you record this? And how do you edit? Is it sort of that as well?
Oh yeah, I try to make it like a masterclass of everything you need to know to get into this line of work. So from the very beginning of like, how do you interpret a script, to what gear do I need? What platforms should I put myself online? And how to market yourself too, because that's a huge part of being a voiceover artist, is just how do you look good online? How do you get the work? So yeah, I cover everything from start to finish.
Yeah, awesome. I'll circle back to the marketing. I wouldn't mind diving more into that. But one of the things that I like to ask people who come on the show is sort of their origin, because I want to know about their journey. So could you tell us how you actually got into being a voiceover artist?
I started in community radio, Jeremy. I started when I was 12 years old, actually. Which is something, I'm not sure if that happens these days anymore, but I was given a weekly show on a community radio station back home in Hervey Bay, just because I showed interest. And I went to the radio station and I was like, "Hey, how do I become an announcer? I'll do anything." And they were just like, "Here, jump on with some work experience kids who were in high school." I was in grade 7 at the time. And I just got to eventually host my own show, play my own music and all of that. Then when I was 18, I went to study radio at Afters, which is a film, TV and radio school in Sydney. So big move from Hervey Bay to Sydney. And that was a 1-year course. And then I came out of there and I started podcast producing. As you mentioned earlier, I've produced a few podcasts for people. And then I think it took maybe 3 years of doing that on the side of working in hospitality before I started going, I want to make this a full-time gig. How do I do that? And that's when I eventually fell into voiceover work. And then now I'm voice coaching as well.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that's the part I'm really interested in. When you did make that decision to, go, I want to do this full time. Could you tell me about what that, a bit more when you made that decision, and what that process was like from going from, okay, I've got to be, working on the side still, as I build this up. Like, what was life like for you when you made that jump?
So I was working probably 30, 40 hours a week in hospitality just as a waiter. And yeah, I decided that I just couldn't work in that industry anymore. It was draining. I was coming home from work tired, but worst, I was coming home uninspired to like do my own thing. And I guess that was the moment when I was like, oh, I need to make a change. What I did while I was working my 40-hour work week, I'd spend my weekends, and my weekends were like Monday and Tuesday because of hospitality. I'd spend them, what I like to call, so it's a metaphor I use called throwing darts. And there were like 5 different dream jobs I wanted to do. One was a YouTuber, one was a voiceover artist, one was a podcaster, one was, I think I was trying to make memes, things like that. And I decided to just throw them at the wall and see what stuck, see what made money, see what made me feel the best. And I just found that voiceover work made money. It worked for me. It was like a dream gig because it meant I could do it any time. I was lucky enough to have a walk-in wardrobe at my share house. So that was like a makeshift studio. And it all just sort of worked out from there.
Yeah, right. And how long ago was that with like when you actually, did this little, exercise as far as that, yeah, I've got to make a change. Like how long ago was that for you?
2018, I think. Was it 2018? Yeah, like August 2018, I think I did the exercise of throwing the darts.
Yeah, okay, awesome. And, over 4 years roughly, like what have you found to be the biggest challenge for you to, bring that dream and that, drive you had to be a voiceover artist into fruition to where you are now?
Mate, the biggest challenge, I've got to say, and I'm saying this knowing how privileged it sounds, the biggest challenge has all been internal. I've not found many people who haven't been supportive of my journey. My parents are incredibly supportive. They've helped me out financially whenever I've needed, which is huge. So the biggest challenge for me has been my fears and my insecurities.
Okay.
Before quitting hospitality, financially, I'm really like, if I can't make this work with the dollars, I'm going to be stressed and I'm not going to be creative. And, you need to be creative when it comes to this, when it comes to even doing the work, but also marketing yourself, and your kind of insecurities and stuff. So I guess that's been my biggest challenge because I've had to ditch a safety net in working a regular hospitality job, which was paying me $600, $700 a week, to potentially making no money, in the first 3 months of doing the thing. So yeah, the biggest challenge has been overcoming those fears and insecurities, I guess.
Yeah, and what are some things that you've done that's like helped you, get over those fears and insecurities?
Well, my partner's been a big help. She's always been there helping me through the harder times when I get all into my doom spiral and go, oh my God, like I've only got $500 left in my account. Like, what am I going to do? She's like, just ride the wave, ride it out. You've made it work. Your business makes money. This week, this month has been quiet. Just ride it through. And whenever she brings me back to center and goes, you're fine right now, you will survive, that's when I'm fine. It's the projecting the fears into the future that really, I guess that's the definition of anxiety, is going, like, what happens if I wake up and my bank account has nothing in it? Well, has that ever happened? No. So why are you worried about it?
Yeah, so kind of, bringing up those, demons in front of yourself unnecessarily, in other words.
Totally. I'm sure you yourself have had to face that being in the industry you have as well. Like, it's gig-based. Like, what happens if we have no clients contact us for work? How do we keep ourselves inspired, motivated, and creative? All you've got to do is bring yourself back to center and realize you're fine right now. So what do I do right now to keep myself good? Maybe.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. And because I see it, like what you said before, how it's difficult when you are in that kind of state to be in the, right frame of mind for creativity. Both of us being in creative fields, it's just, dead weight if you're in that kind of frame of mind. So, no, totally. Like, you've got to look after yourself and, have a strong headspace so that you're not worrying about those sorts of things, so you can, deliver the right kind of, creative product that we need to, push out.
For sure.
Yeah.
Another sort of challenge that I've had to overcome is pricing. Because I'm financially savvy.
Pricing yourself, like your services, man. Yeah.
Putting my prices to what I'm worth and not being scared to do that. It's so important to be able to go, yes, I am worth that. I'm a real empathetic person. I'm really financially minded. And insecurities, as I mentioned, has been one of my hardest things to overcome. So when I go to a client, hey, my prices are this, backspace, and then price it like $100 or $200 less, it won't work because I've got to make ends meet. And I'm lucky now that I've got an agent who helps me with pricing, but it's still, I don't know why, it's still something that I really struggle with to go, yeah, I am worth these prices and my clients should be happy to pay for it. Because I've got this fear of people going, no, you're not worth that. Or them not understanding why I price as high as I do. That's still something, even though I've been working in this industry for 4 years and know that I've got to make ends meet, I've still got this I just want to do the work for you. And I'm grateful that I get to do this work. So why am I charging so high?
Yeah, right. And no doubt as well, I would probably guess that you've probably never had pushback from the prices you've put out, even when it has been, higher, then you're like, oh, is that going to be problematic? No doubt so it's just made up, it's made up in our own minds.
It's all in here, man. It's all in the head. Getting over those hurdles, but I'm able to talk about it. So I guess I'm on the road to, to getting over it. Yeah,
no, brilliant. And what I'm curious about, when you mentioned earlier, kind of the marketing side of things, what was that like when you first, started out, because that's when you're still trying to, find your feet and everything like that. What were some things that you did? Do you still do those things, or is it has it evolved for you?
I've always been really I've taken myself way too seriously in my marketing, I think, in the past. And these days, people don't want to see a clear-cut, polished ad in their face. They want to see something that they can relate to. And the marketing side is still something that I'm not 100% on. I don't feel 100% confident because I take myself so seriously. TikTok, funnily enough, has been really helpful in letting me take down those walls and go, all they want to see is a real person doing a real thing. And some of the biggest TikToks that I've posted in the past couple of years have been ones where I've just set up a camera and just filmed myself recording a read, not edited, not done anything like that, and just let people go, oh, that's really cool what he's doing. We're just watching a real person do a real thing.
Yeah. How long have you been on TikTok for? Because I think I have seen you post something, maybe on Facebook, like that TikTok video. So how long have you been on TikTok for?
It's been just over a year, I think, or a year and a half.
Okay.
I've taken a break from posting, which I guess it's one of those things. It's hard to pick up once you've let it drop for a little bit. But it's been, the growth on TikTok is just overwhelming. As soon as you have one video that goes to a couple thousand people, then suddenly your followers grow and you build an audience, you build a community of people who really want to see what you do. And it's lovely, but it's overwhelming.
Yeah, I definitely need to look into it because I'm really terrible with social media. Because I'm not really a user of it myself, right? If it were up to me, I just wouldn't use any of it. But I have to be,
too.
I have to be in touch with the community and everything like that. So I'm active enough on Facebook and a little bit on Instagram. LinkedIn, I'm pretty active on, but these newer ones like TikTok and stuff, I definitely need to, make an effort to learn it and, see what it's all about,
TikTok is amazing because you can go from zero audience to thousands or millions of followers overnight.
Well, I'll make my account today.
Oh yeah, do it. And I went from being very, very cynical about it, going, oh, it's for little kids, whatever, to a friend showing me a voice artist who was just posting reads, not really doing anything fantastic, and had millions of views. And I was like, I could do that. Like, there's no reason why I couldn't do that. It doesn't change. It doesn't mean I am a child. Regardless of how I feel towards a service, a social media thing, I can't argue with the fact that it works. It's an amazing marketing tool that can drive people to enjoy what I do, connect with me, and build the business. I can't argue with that.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day as well, like, even if there's a high proportion of younger users on the platform, like, that's now, like, in 5 years, 10 years, what's it going to look like? It's just, I imagine it will follow a trend similar to other platforms, because people are saying the same thing about maybe not so much Facebook, but like Instagram and Snapchat when they first came out. So just about everyone has an account on there. So
on that trend thing, I watched a video by Tom Scott. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He's a UK YouTuber who talks about some big ideas. He normally tours to unknown places and tells you historical facts about them. But he's also an computer engineer. And he posted a video recently of his ideas of where the future of technology is going to go. And he says short form video is becoming the new long form video. YouTube based itself around long form video from the very beginning. And now since TikTok, we're seeing Instagram Reels, we're seeing YouTube Shorts.
YouTube Shorts, yeah. There's more of a push of those sorts of things.
Well, our attention span is like getting shorter.
Yeah. What's your view on that? Hey, like, 'cause I have a kind of like cynicism around it. It's I don't know how true it is, but it is kind of tragic. Although the fact that YouTube is still so strong, given that there's long form content on there, I think lends itself that people still crave that in a certain context. But like, what are your thoughts on like having really short videos and the popularity of it, I suppose?
I still watch more long form content than I do short form, personally. But short form content, if it is high quality, which TikTok can be questionable.
High quality, but as in like high quality, like production, or like the actual
the content. So
yeah,
if I'm learning something from a short video, then I have no problem with it. But if it's a short video just of like memes and things like that, I'm like, what am I getting from this? What value is really being added to my life? Is it just wasting my time? I'm pretty mindful with the content I watch. There's some trash I watch on Netflix here and there.
Oh,
as with all
mate,
of us.
yeah. I indulge myself in a bit of trash as well. So yeah, no shame in that.
Yeah, but I think short form is fine as long as it's helpful to my life. Which is the kind of content I want to make as well. I want to make sure that I'm not just doing some silly thing for the sake of being a silly thing, because too many people do that, and it's not. It might engage some people, but it's not the audience that I want to engage.
Yeah, not the kind of audience you want to attract. That's fair enough. But look, you're now kind of you've branched into that coaching space. And I sort of want to get an idea of like some advice that you might have given yourself when you had started out to someone now who might be in that similar position where they want to get into being a voice actor or a voice artist or some sort of an audio producer. What are like some basic tips that you might give someone who was in that position?
So first of all, I think my biggest tip, and something I wish I could have told myself 10 years ago, is just, it's not about you. It's stop taking things so personally, because there is a lot of rejection in this industry. There's a lot of times you'll post an audition and either get negative feedback or just not land the job at all. And as soon as you start taking that to heart and taking that as a personal hit, that's when you'll start to lose motivation and lose energy towards doing this. You can't take it to heart, because the only person who truly knows you is you, which means nothing really is a personal attack, because they don't know what you're going through. They don't know anything about you. So that's, I suppose, a psychological aspect, which is like
so sort of having like thick skin in a way. Like you just got to, yeah.
Don't take that negative feedback as a hit at you. Take it as some general advice to maybe improve yourself or improve your skills, not so much yourself, because, unless they're going, hey, like your character is weak, but that never happens. Normally you just don't fit the bill for the job. Like, it's just that your voice isn't exactly what the client was looking for, and that'll happen. Yes, so that's the first thing. The second thing, if you come into any new field and expect it to be easy or expect yourself to master it instantly, you're kidding yourself. I believe in the 10,000 hour rule, which is that it takes 10,000 hours to master anything. And there are so many cases, so many examples of how great artists, musicians, bands, I follow a lot of music stuff, have used this 10,000 hour rule. And the best one that comes to mind is actually the Beatles. Back in the 60s or 70s, they got their big break playing a venue in Germany. And this venue paid them next to nothing, but they would give them, I think, 4-hour sets every night. And this lasted for 12 months. And with that time that they had to develop their craftsmanship and the band synergy, I guess, with all the musicians in this band, that's what made them excellent. This was before they put out any great albums or singles. So they had all of that time before recording to become masters of what they did, which is why they became masters, is of the 10,000 hour rule. So I guess to any new student who comes in, you can't go to a piano teacher and expect to come out as Mozart on the same day. You've got to put in that time and that energy. And the students I find who excel do their homework. They go home and they find any time they have to record a script and to edit that down. And I encourage all of my students to send me their audio files, on a weekend or whatever, for me to give them feedback on, because I want to help people who want to help themselves.
I think that's outside of what you do, that's just good advice for anyone. If you want to get good at something, you have to be doing it. The way I see it. So
find any chance you have, and I know finding time is hard, but if you truly want to do something, time will not be an issue.
That's beautiful. I'm sure you got another tip, but before we get to that, favorite Beatle or favorite Beatles song, or both.
Oh, mate. Oh my God. Paul McCartney, I think, would be my favorite Beatle. But man, that's such a hard question.
That's one left to fill.
Can I just say the Abbey Road album? Like, just,
yeah,
I don't know.
That's a top
Finding
album.
a song is like, but the Abbey Road album is just brilliant. So, oh mate, what about you? Do you have an answer to that?
Well, I think I'll probably pick an album. I would say I really like Help. I think Help is a really great album. And favorite Beatle, I lean more towards John. I don't know. I think I like his sentimentality a little better. But yeah, do you have a final tip for just someone who's new to the industry, new to your field?
Surround yourself with people who know more than you. that's something I didn't do when I was a kid. When I was a kid, I had this whole like, I am the best, you know, I shouldn't have to seek advice. Someone's going to discover me and tell me how good I am. That won't get you anywhere. You need to like go out and meet people and learn from those who have more skill than you do, that's why the people who come to me and they're like, I want a voice coach, I'm like, you're already on the right track, because you already know that you've got to seek advice from someone. Even if you feel like you're already good enough, you've got to go and put yourself out there. So
Yeah, and again, yeah, great advice for, anyone. And for you personally, like, do you have, people, is it just purely for mentorship for voice, or other skills that, you're striving towards that you try and surround yourself, just try and have people surrounding you with?
Financially minded people, business people, I try to surround myself with, because, I mean, the voice community is really good. I'm going to say something contradictory of what I've just said. I feel like...
I'll cut this part out of the podcast.
Yeah, I don't want to sound full of myself, but I am actually like a pretty good voice artist.
No, nothing wrong with that.
Oh, sorry, I'm getting a phone call right now.
Oh.
Oh.
Well, we lost you.
Hold on. I can't hear you. One sec. Okay. Hello, can you hear me again?
Yeah, we're back on. That's all good.
Sorry, I just had a phone call come in.
Oh, no, you're all good.
It was a student, actually.
Sorry. No, so you were saying, you're a great voice coach. What's wrong with that?
Oh, great. Yeah, I'm great at voiceovers.
Yeah.
I try to surround myself with people who are better at business than I am, and better at marketing than I am, and even better at life than I am, because, so it's only been over the past 6 months that I first picked up and read a book. I've never read.
Oh, you're not a big reader, hey?
I'm not a big reader. But a friend of mine who, actually, she was my first ever student. She gave me a book for my birthday called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, who's a spiritual teacher. And it's changed my views on so many things, and has helped me stay centered when things go, or when I feel like things are going wrong. Because that book, I can't recommend it enough. It's the first book I've ever read, and it's changed my views on so many things, on life and on business. I can't recommend that book enough.
Yeah, gee, okay.
Sorry,
we'll have to add it to the list. But has it sparked a little bit of a, like a reading bug for you? Like, now is it something you intend to do more of, or is it just, when it strikes?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say no if I get a book recommendation. So, are you reading anything that you could recommend?
Oh, gee. At the moment, I'll tell you, do you like Batman?
Do I like Batman? Yeah, I like Batman.
Oh, okay.
I've never been a comic book nerd, though. Sorry, I don't mean to say nerd.
No, nothing wrong with that. But even if you like the films, there's a book. I just finished it the other week. Actually, it was an audio book, so I heard if you like audiobooks, you can listen to it that way. But it's a book called Batman and Psychology, and the guy who wrote it is called Travis Langley. So he's a psychologist, but he was just a huge Batman fan, and so he wanted to write a book about the psychology of Batman and some of the characters surrounding him in that universe. And it's actually really it's not only very faithful and delicate to the source content, so like the comic books and the films, and there's been TV shows for Batman as well, so it's very faithful to that, but also it's quite academic in the way it approaches it from the psychology of it. And I know very little about psychology, but I do have an interest in human behavior, so I just found it so fascinating because it was like two interests in one. It was great. So if you do like Batman,
is it like the psychology of Batman as a character, or the psychology of like the stories that are told in the Batman world?
It explores both, right? So like
Right.
it zeroes in on, Bruce Wayne as the character and how Batman is formed, and kind of like actually linking it to real psychological phenomena and what's been studied from, like, things like trauma and having like a hero complex, those sorts of things. Like, and it's really fascinating. And then also
Ah,
some of the well-known villains who do sort of little profiles of them, and it's like, here's what I think about them, like how I would diagnose them from this point of view based on what we know. It's pretty yeah.
oh, so like diagnose the villains as
Yeah.
with medical conditions and
Yeah,
stuff. That's
yeah, yeah.
so interesting.
It is very interesting. So if you do like Batman, I
Yeah.
highly recommend that to anyone who's watching this as well or listening to this. But since we're on the topic of advice, I'm asking for a friend. Because you have produced some great podcasts. What are some tips you would give to someone who might be producing a podcast himself and could use some advice, some tips, and help and making it better?
Yeah, okay. Talking from a friend. Yeah.
Just a friend, just a friend.
Okay, so first of all, when it comes to starting a podcast, you've got to make sure you have an interesting and unique idea. Now, that's really hard these days because there are millions of podcasts on millions of different things. But just have an idea that you connect with, first of all, and maybe have a different take on it than someone else who's trying the same thing. Trying to think of an idea. So say it's a veterinarian podcast. I don't know, coming out of thin air. Maybe try talking to vets about the psychology of what they do. Talking about maybe... it's hard to say. But
No, but I see what
start
you
with a
mean. Like,
really
you
good idea.
take something that's generic, and then you specify it with something that's your own spin on it or your own kind of brand.
And don't be afraid to make it a niche, because as TikTok has taught me, there is a niche to everything, and in every niche, there are thousands of people who want to listen to that thing or want to watch that thing. So don't be afraid to make it niche. As long as it's
There's
something
sub
that
niches
you
as
connect
well.
with.
It's interesting.
Oh, totally. Totally. Yeah. That's first of all. Second, find a good producer or become a good audio producer, because
I got to spend my
too many
10,000 hours.
yes. Too many podcasts have crap audio, and for a podcast that is centered around audio primarily, I mean, there are people doing video stuff, and that's cool, but production quality is so important, because even if you have the best, most unique, interesting idea, if it sounds rubbish or it looks rubbish, people are going to tune out after the first 5 minutes, if that. So, yeah, that's something to keep in mind as well. And then something probably about marketing. You could probably do a little short course on marketing about, how to advertise that you do a podcast, because it's all very well to put it to your friends and family, but that's not reaching probably the audience that you want to reach. That's reaching the people who are like, oh, very good, you're doing a podcast, that's good. But you want to reach people who will actually get value from it. So being able to market yourself on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, things like that to the audience that you want is so important. Another thing, don't take the numbers to heart. The numbers don't really mean as much as you think they do. I'm guilty of doing this, and...
So you mean kind of like the
TikTok.
vanity metrics, like how many downloads, how many
Yeah.
likes, how many views,
Oh,
depending
yeah.
on what channel?
It's so easy to get stuck in that, like, oh, I've put more effort into this, therefore the numbers should be higher. It doesn't work like that. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. But it's never, as soon as you take that personally, that's when you stop doing it and you feel disheartened and you don't have the motivation to keep going or put in the effort. So just avoid looking at them is my advice.
Cool. Well, no, I think it's great advice. I've taken notes.
Okay, sweet.
I'll do.
For your friend, right?
That's right, just for my friend. He needs to see it. But we're gonna talk about a film very shortly. But I did want to ask you because I didn't get a chance to really ask you this. What has been the highlight of your career as a voice artist or coach so far? And you don't have to say right now, but being on a podcast with me. But besides that,
for sure. No, it does. It's really nice to have to be seen as like as much as it seems like a vanity thing, I guess. To be seen as an expert in my field is really.
Oh
nice.
No, but you are like I'm I joke around a bit, but you are like you very very good at what you do. So.
No, I appreciate that. Because I've been known to avoid posting about my like achievements and stuff because I don't want to come off as that guy who's like, all talk and not substance. So it is nice to be seen by others as a professional. That's really nice. Some of the highlights, mate, I'm just grateful that I can do what I want to do at my own time, get paid fairly. I'm happy with that. I love that I can get out of bed in the morning and go, I am not having to work for anyone who doesn't value me or value what I do. I get the choice to take on projects that I want to and stuff. I'm really grateful for that. That's been a highlight. I love seeing a finished project. So if I voice for an ad, it's an interesting part about this industry. I rarely get to see a finished ad or a finished radio commercial. It's super weird, but when I work for agencies, I just send off my voice and it goes somewhere. I get paid for it. But
sometimes you never hear about it again or see it.
Yeah. And I don't know where it goes. I'm like, it's just gone off. I send it from my inbox and it's playing somewhere, maybe in a cinema in a small town. But like, so it's really nice when a client goes, oh, hey, if you wanted to see it, here's a link to it or here's the finished thing. And I'm like, that looks sick. That looks great. It's a little pat on the back for me.
Yeah. Oh, you get to see how it all comes together, don't you? That's sort of the excitement of it all.
Yeah. I really love getting to be characters, and when a client goes, hey, like, we're building this around your voice, so have as much fun as you want with it. It doesn't happen often, but when it happens, oh man, it's the best feeling to go like, well, all right, I'm going to have as much fun as I want with this because I'm the center of this project.
Yeah, I did see one where you were a ball.
Yeah,
like in a pile of ball. I can't remember what it was for, but it was I do remember that one.
First ad, yeah. And I actually got to be two characters in that. I was only cast as one.
Right.
And I was on the phone with them. So similar to what we're doing now, I had an earphone in underneath my headphones. That's how I do phone-directed sessions, they're called. And, I'm having fun with the first character. And they're like, can you do any silly voices? The first one that comes to mind is a voice like this. Oh my God, like, check out my abs. And they crack up over the phone. They lose it. And they're like, we're using that. So I got to be two characters in the one ad.
Oh, that's brilliant.
I was over the moon and I got to see the finished one and it all. I was stoked. That's one of the highlights, definitely.
Yeah, that's quality. But look, we're going to sort of new segment of the show. So this is the first time I've actually a lot of firsts today. So new segment of the show, we're going to actually talk about a film, and it's one that's been chosen by my guest, which is obviously you today, Angus. But before we segue into that, I'm gonna abuse my privilege as host, because I found something very distressing when I was on your website, and it was a blog post, in fact, and it said, this is what the title was. It says, "Why audio is more important than video." And so, I can see the beads of sweat that are, starting to form on your forehead. but as Pauline Hanson demanded, please explain.
Okay, all right. So, did you watch the video that I put together?
I did. So actually, I know the answer. It's actually a very good answer, but I just wanted to prompt you for that. Why is, sure, from your point of view, why is audio like really important? Not more important, but why is it important?
Okay. When you watch a YouTube video and you're on data and you're in a black spot and it suddenly goes down to 240p, you can still watch the video as long as the audio is high enough quality. It's when the inverse happens that it becomes really hard to watch. It's when the audio is all grainy and choppy, but the video is still high quality. That's when things get hard to watch. And it's interesting because the reason is actually biological. Humans have evolved better ears than eyes. There are more people who wear glasses than wear hearing aids.
Yeah, guilty.
So that's something. Yeah, guilty for both of us. Yeah. Hearing happens all around the body. Eyesight happens only directly in front of us. When we hear things, it can wake us from our sleep. Evolutionarily, that's because, like, if we hear, I don't know, a tiger approaching us or some killer at our door, it's like we're in danger, whereas I don't know about you, but I can sleep through anything with my eyes closed as long as it's quiet enough. There's also the part of it takes more samples per second in audio as compared to video for us to see video. So, as you know, most video is filmed in 25 to 30 frames per second. Well, in audio terms, the audio that's probably coming out the speakers right now for your podcast is around 44,000 samples per second. It takes a lot more audio to make up crisp audio than it does video to make a smooth video. So there's also that part as well.
Yeah, no, like I said, when I first saw it, I was like obviously triggered, and I saw it. I was like, I'm going to cancel this guy. This is like, he's not going on my podcast anymore. But no, like
important, Jeremy. Video and audio go hand in hand.
Yeah, but once I actually, what, because it was a video as well. When I watched the video you made, like it made sense, and it actually reminded me of something that like when I studied film, one of my lecturers, I remember them saying something like, if in a film, if you don't notice the sound, they've done a really good job. That's when you know it's good. If you notice sound, like unless there's like an obviously like within the story it's calling to something, like the sound mix, you shouldn't notice just because it's meant to be natural. It's when it's not good, that's when you're like, oh, this is off, and you just don't like gel with it. It's so no, you're totally like right, like how intrinsic it is, and we don't actually notice it because like I said, we're hearing it and it's digestible when it's good, but when it's bad, it's like, no, I'm not watching anymore. Yeah.
That's a great segue into maybe talking about our film, if you wanted to, Jeremy.
It totally is, and that's why I threw it in there. So the film you've chosen is The Guilty, and just before going on, obviously there'll be spoilers, so a big spoiler alert. So if you haven't seen it, then probably don't watch beyond this point. But just before we have a chat about it, Angus, I'll just give sort of like a brief overview of what it is. So it's 2021 film, so it was released just towards the end of 2021. The director was Antoine. I'm very careful of how I say this last name, but Fuqua, and it's written by Nick Pizzolatto. So he wrote the screenplay. So he's also the writer of the True Detective series. So it basically stars Jake Gyllenhaal in the lead. He's playing this erratic, troubled LAPD officer called Joe, and he's working as a 911 emergency operator, and he's going through the calls. And what the story is, he gets a call from a distressed girl called Emily, and he finds out once she's been speaking to him that she's been abducted, and they're in the car right now, and I've got to do something. So we'll have a bit more of a chat about it, but what made you decide to what made you choose this film, Angus, to come on and talk about today?
Well, I chose this one, Jeremy, because it centers so much of its tension and its drama, and the entire plot relies upon audio. most of what we see visually happens inside the walls of an LAPD call center, 911 call center. So what we hear through audio tells us most of the story, because all that we're seeing, like 95% of the visuals are centered on Jake Gyllenhaal. So first of all, if anyone's a fan of Jake Gyllenhaal, watch this film. If you're not a huge fan of, I don't know, him and his acting or what he looks like, don't watch it, because it's a Jake Gyllenhaal fest.
Yeah, you're very much up close and personal, aren't you? But what do you sort of?
Sure, it's right in his face.
Yeah. What do you like your overall impressions of the film? Like, I take it you obviously liked it, but what's your overall impressions of when you watched it?
I loved it. I loved the way it built tension. I loved the twist. I wasn't expecting it at all. I sort of had an inkling that things weren't as clear cut as what it seemed, and you get put in this twisted. You're aware that the story is being told from Joe, the character's point of view, so you're aware that things aren't quite right. You can tell he's sleep deprived. You can tell that time is warping. You can see on his phone, like when he tries to call his ex-wife, the time sometimes jumps around in the film. And that's by design.
I didn't pick up on that. That's good. Yeah. So like it's sort of going backwards and forwards, hey?
When I was told about this movie by a friend, they were like, "Oh, the whole movie happens, just in the space of an hour of his life." So I paid close attention to the clock on his phone, and that's not the case. What we see is it actually jumps forward. So the film is set 24 hours before his court hearing. We don't know what happened to him. We don't know really what until the end of the film, when he opens up to Emily to try to stop her from committing suicide. So it's sort of this twisted, anxiety-ridden, depressed guy who knows he's going to court the next day. When we see this time jump to like 6 a.m. and we know that this deadline is approaching quicker and quicker. It's really interesting that if you weren't paying attention to the clock, the movie makes sense in thinking that it travels in just a normal timeline. But if you pay close attention to that clock, you know that it doesn't. And you know that it's warped as a sense of this character's like mangled view of like his reality.
Yeah, I didn't pay so much attention to the clock. My sense of time was kind of coming from the change in shifts, like when he's talking to the other people around there, and like when that was happening in reference to when they were talking about we've only got I think they said we've only got an hour left or whatever, and then next thing they're leaving, and then the day shift is coming in, and also the because they've also got all the what would you call the news up in front of them, I guess, and all the footage that's going on. So you're seeing, the time of day change and whatnot. I sort of got that sense, but I think I should go watch back and see the clock, because I always find those things fascinating, those little tiny details there.
Oh yeah, for sure. What else about it? I guess, we see this whole film through the lens of a traumatized guy who something's not right with. He's been benched. He doesn't fit the mold of a standard 911 caller. He also, you can tell that something's not right at the start of the film by his lack of empathy. He gets a caller.
I just on that, I remember watching that bit. I'm like, this guy's an arsehole. He's not. Yeah. He couldn't care less about the people that are calling in. And granted, there's one guy that is being robbed by a prostitute. Obviously. So that's kind of tongue in cheek and it's funny. But then there's a guy that's really he's high, isn't he? Isn't that a guy that's had some sort of a I think not an overdose, but he's had a bit too much and he's calling because he's really afraid, and he's just deadpan, what's wrong? Where are you?
Doesn't care. Doesn't care. He just wants something exciting and something to feel. So he's got a hero complex. I mean, we can bring it back to the psychology, the book you were talking about, the Batman, the hero complex. You can tell he's traumatized, and he wants an emergency to cleanse his soul of whatever he's done. We don't know at the beginning of the film just the extent of the crime that he's committed. And he ends up like talking about it and like pleading guilty at the end in order to save this caller's life. But yeah, at the start, we don't know. And it's so interesting that you can see the foreshadowing of that through the way he treats people. He doesn't care about people who he feels have done things to themselves. Like the guy with the prostitute, it's like, oh, well, you were doing something shady anyway, so you deserve what happened.
The same with the guy on drugs. Yeah. He even says, he's like, yeah, well, that was your fault, wasn't it? Like something like that. Yeah.
Like, I don't care. I only care about people who haven't, intended to do stuff. It's all this reflection of who he is. And I love that it's such a psychological trip through a traumatized guy's psyche, I guess.
Yeah, right. And because, like, it kind of reminded me of some other films. I'm not sure if you'd seen it, but actually, there's one especially. Have you seen The Conversation? Francis Ford Coppola. So that's interesting as well, and that's very sound-based because it's a guy who, I think, remember, he's a part of the police department, or at least a consultant for the police department, and he basically listens in through like surveillance and bugs and things like that. So he's an expert in that. And similar type of thing, he jumps on a case and he gets very invested in it, but he doesn't have all the facts in front of him, and that's sort of where the twist comes in for that film. So it's kind of the same in this film as well. Like he doesn't have all the facts, but he makes a very big leap and a rush to judgment, which is probably why he's in court in the first place. One could assume, like we know, like from what the case was, he basically gunned down a 19-year-old who, he was innocent. So, like he's done that, and you can imagine there might have been some sort of confusion, but I think it's sort of indicative of, and a bit of an indictment of the, LAPD in general, which does have a very horrific record, at least in the last, 50 years.
Yeah, for sure. He goes all into this case without knowing all of the facts, makes so many reckless decisions, and despite his recklessness being the reason that he's been benched and is going to, court the next day. So he's not really learnt. We're watching a character make the same mistakes as he's made previously. It's hard to watch, but the film is done in such a beautiful way in not giving us all the pieces of the puzzle to begin with, and really letting us view it and put the pieces together ourselves. And I love films like that. Films like Knives Out does a really good job like that. I know it's completely different, and that's a murder mystery film, but I just love that when we're not handed everything at the start, we're not handed a sweeping shot of the city, and we're not told who, what, where, when, why. We're sort of just chucked into this guy's life. We know that things aren't quite right, and we can see that he's a little messed up in the head by the way he's treating people around him. And we're just along for the ride. We're watching this guy make mistakes, and, we might be like, no, don't do that. But we're like, just watching, just a little fly on the wall. And I like that about this film.
Yeah, and just another thing I remember, just talking about the empathy kind of thing, like just how unhinged he is, with the people, like his co-workers or team or whatever, like whatever you're going to call them. Like the guy, I remember there's a guy to his left, and he basically, like, up to that point had just been really cold, and like I think he even yelled at him already, and then he's like, oh, I'm sorry, and like he, just to get some information out of him, like plays nice, like, yeah, we should go out to a bar sometime, like go for a drink. And then once he gets the information, he's like, cool, and just leaves it around.
I feel so bad for that guy.
Yeah, right.
Imagine working with someone and you're like, all you want is to like just make friends with the people you work with. And this guy's like, yeah, like, I'm sorry, I've been so mean to you. Let's go get a beer after work. He's like, yeah, okay. And then he's like, "Oh, thanks for nothing. Thanks for the advice. Bye now."
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But like, just on that like empathy point of view, like there is like obviously there's an extreme case with that character Joe, but I wonder what we don't really get to hear what the other operators are like, and just from my experience speaking to, people in law enforcement, and we're obviously in Australia, so things are different contextually. But I know I've spoken, to people in that area, and that there does have to be a certain level of detachment just to be able to cope with the job. You can't have an extreme level of attachment to it. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you see that? Because he sort of has two extremes, right? Like he's detached from certain things, but then he's like extremely when it's like becomes personal with the main inciting incident with the Emily character and her daughter. Like that's when it's real for him. Like what are your sort of thoughts on that?
I think every job to some extent you have to sort of disconnect from. Now, I'm lucky in the job I have in that I can be mostly myself throughout it. I can talk to clients the way that I want to. But I remember when I was working hospitality, as soon as I walked in the door, I had to be someone else.
There's a certain persona you have to
I still cared
embody.
about the people, I still cared about giving them a really good experience. But if I was myself fully, I don't know if they would like have as good of an experience because I'm not as chirpy as what I had to be. Now, and I know that job is nowhere near as traumatizing as perhaps working as a paramedic or a 911 or triple O operator in Australia. So those jobs would have even more, I don't know how people do it really, because you'd have to clock in and out of this persona, and as soon as you walk out the door, you can't take that job with you because you've just, had a call from someone who maybe had an overdose or something, or who did something to themselves, or a partner of someone who did something to themselves. I can't imagine if you weren't able to compartmentalize that, you wouldn't be able to do a job like that. But that also sucks because when you call, you want someone with empathy because you need that level of care from a real human talking on the other end. So it's a catch-22, I guess, because if that person had real care, they wouldn't be able to work in that industry, in that job. So yeah, it's a really interesting question.
Yeah, and I think as well, like if we're going back to like Joe's case, like when we're talking about the level of empathy he's displaying with the guy on drugs and the guy who's been robbed, versus how he's with Emily and her daughter and whatnot. Like, is that really empathy is a question, because the only reason he, I guess, becomes invested in it is probably two things. One, it's probably a lot more exciting, but then also there's a parallel because he's like, oh, I have a daughter, and he kind of makes his promise. He's like, no, I'm going to get your mum back and whatever.
He's projecting his own life onto this other person.
Exactly,
so in a way,
yeah.
He's not caring about another person. He's only caring about his hero complex and him trying to make it up to his own mind to go, I have helped someone, therefore my sins are washed clean, or whatever.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, because there's a part in it when this is sort of like, I think halfway through, and like we're sort of in the, the middle of the action, like another person calls up and like genuine thing, I think they've been like robbed or something like that, and he's like, oh, you got to call someone else. Like, I'm waiting for a call. It's like, what? Like, yeah. It's a job, man. What are you doing?
So each time you call, I'm going to,
it says, it's good. You're always going to get me, so you got to call someone else. And then like something else I found super funny as well, like, because there were a couple of times when someone would come into the room, like that's when he goes into that back room where he's a bit more private. There's a couple of times like one of the other officers will come in and say, oh, there's a call that they called for you. And he just like loses his mind whenever someone does that. It's like, what do you mean? Why haven't you patched the 3 years? I found that kind of a bit funny.
Yeah. This guy's not okay. We know
No.
this guy's not okay. Like,
Unhinged
Yeah.
and just out of control. But the other thing as well, this is sort of, I guess, from the production point of view, which I found interesting because, being made, in 2021, under, COVID guidelines, I actually thought it was a super good idea in the sense that it's very contained. And just as a side thing, I really like those. I'm interested in seeing those types of films to see how you can, craft a cohesive story that's, still interesting, still engaging, still entertaining, but only have it in one setting. Because in a way, it's kind of like the audio version of Rear Window, where you're looking out the window and there's all these people's lives that you're watching, and there's a kind of story there. I find that kind of like the audio equivalent, and I guess do you have an appreciation there from the sense of that production point of view, but also how that story is told through sound and audio and the voice acting as well, because I thought that was really incredible.
Yeah, voice acting front is flawless. I couldn't fault it. I was engaged the whole time. These people were genuine callers to me. Brilliant voice acting. So props to the talented actors who did those roles. And I'd forgotten about Rear Window. This movie really is a modern equivalent to Rear Window in the fact that we're seeing the movie through the lens of a character who actually is crippled in a similar way. Like this guy, not a physical broken leg, but emotionally and psychologically. And this guy doesn't have the full story. We're only seeing.
The only difference is that in Rear Window he was right and no one believed him, whereas in this one he's wrong.
Okay, good point.
Yeah,
good
that's
point.
the only difference. Yeah,
I haven't seen it in many years, not since high school English class.
Yeah.
I think.
yeah. No, it's but I get the position that they're in is very much similar. Because even though he does turn out to be right, he could have been wrong. Because he didn't have he's just piecing things together from the information he has.
For sure. Audio wise, it's brilliant. And without the audio, this wouldn't have been as powerful as a movie. So, okay, a couple of notes about this movie. It was originally a Dutch film.
I wanted to talk about that because go on though. Go on.
I've not actually seen the Dutch version. I really should have watched it, but I didn't. But Jake Gyllenhaal took personal interest in that film, and Gyllenhaal is a co-producer of The Guilty, and he pitched it to filmmakers, to Netflix, whoever it was, and when I reckon we could do this, it's a great movie for COVID restrictions, I reckon we can punch it out in 5 days. Film it, produce it, get it out in 5 days. It took them 11 days, but that's still a crazy feat.
Yeah.
For such a brilliantly put together film. And that shows as well just how, the minimalism working on it in COVID restriction can also be a positive because there's less going to location, scouting, shooting, all of that sort of stuff. Yeah.
And I think good creativity can actually be carved out of the limitations you have. So having restrictions placed on you can actually, drive you to something that you never would have even fathomed or thought of before.
I agree with that. And that's something I tell my students as well when they walk in. They're like, because, I'm in a studio now. They're like, wow, it's going to take so long for me to have a studio. I tell them it's not the gear that makes you great. It's how you use it. It's your skill behind the microphone. It's not necessarily about the microphone. You can get, these days, $150 is an amazing commercial quality microphone. So it's not about having a $1,000 microphone. It's about, your skill behind it. So I firmly believe that limitation is a good thing in the beginning because you learn to use your skills over what you have.
Yeah, no, totally. But just back on the fact that this is a remake as well. What are your thoughts on remakes in general? Because Hollywood, well, are very well known for taking great films and making remakes of them, and sometimes, probably most of the times, they don't match up to the original, and they're like, why did they remake this? Sometimes it's like, this is great, and like, what
Jeremy,
do you have a view on that?
Jeremy, it's the same as music. These days, you turn on commercial radio and there's a remix of a song that was made in the 70s. It's originality is expensive and hard to come by these days. I feel like people want something that feels familiar, but is also fresh. And that's the easiest way to give people something that feels familiar is to remake it, sadly. I don't like it. I prefer something original. For example, I mean, they've remade Scream. Like, I've seen billboards for it and ads for it. I don't know why.
Have they remade it? Or I've seen that. I think that's just a sequel. Not that. Yeah, I think it is a sequel. Awful. I've heard. I've not watched it, but they should have stopped. They should have. I mean, the first one was okay. But...
And even with the budget they had for this new Matrix film, why not, make it something new? Why not have an original idea? I've not seen the new Matrix film because of the bad reviews it's gotten.
Right.
But it's just like, why continue something? Why not make something brand new? And it's because of the fact that people like something familiar, I think. It comes down to what the audience wants.
I think it's that, but like it's like, I guess the way that it's operated from the point of view of a commodity, in the sense that there's a formula, like we know people like this, we've just got to, like I said, freshen it up and make it look new, and we can sell it, like, which I don't like that view of cinema. I think we can do better. I get it, like I understand it, like if it is from a business point of view, that's obviously a much better investment, a much more predictable investment than something that's completely original. We don't know what it's going to be like, but it could blow up. We don't know. So I do get that, but at the same time, I don't agree with it. I don't think that's how we should approach filmmaking.
I agree with that. We really are in an age where if it doesn't look good on paper, or the executives don't think it's going to make money, oftentimes things don't get greenlit. It's the same way I feel about big actors. Zendaya at the moment seems to be in everything. I can't watch a new movie or a TV show without her in it. And I was talking to my partner. I was like, why is Zendaya in everything? I get she's like, I don't know, pretty and young and she's a decent actor.
Yeah, she's the next big thing,
surely,
She's it.
Surely give someone else a go. Like, we'll never have the next batch of actors if we never give them a go. But she said, and my partner had a good point. She was like, people will watch it for her. People love her.
Yeah, it draws people in. It's like, have you seen that, like that latest Zendaya film? Like that's how it'll be referred to. Totally, like, and that I guess that's what star quality is. Like it's that's how it's used for productions. It's not like, that film that is about a 911 operator. It's like, have you seen that Jake Gyllenhaal film? Like that one where like that's sort of how it leads.
For sure.
Yeah. Although it doesn't necessarily like guarantee the success of it, like financially or artistically. So, but
that's true. That's true.
It's good. It's a good idea.
But I like seeing original stuff with new people. I've always liked having my finger on the pulse of new music and new artists. Because I've always liked the feeling of going, hey, have you heard this new song by this new band? I think they're going to be big, and I like to be right about that, just from an ego point of view. So the same way I feel about films and actors. And I myself, I haven't made it in the field of voiceover, so I guess if I was offered a gig voice acting, I would be stoked. So that's the way I feel. I want to watch someone up and coming, someone maybe rough around the edges, because I want to see their improvement, just as I would want to be given a chance and have that same people give me the same chance.
Yeah, no, totally. That's fair enough. We're gonna wrap up, Angus, but do you have any last thoughts, sentiments on The Guilty, and then we'll do a bit of a wrap up.
Oh, mate. There aren't too many films that I sit down and that capture my attention from start to finish. A lot of films it's so easy to press the pause button on Netflix and go off and grab a snack and come back. But this one I was all into. It was brilliantly shot. The audio was so good. Voice acting, just in general, definitely recommend it. If you like your psychological, I would call it a thriller, I think would be the genre. Not that genres are super important anymore. But yeah, I don't watch things for Jake Gyllenhaal. So I'm not really an actor person. Like, I don't flock to see any films because of an actor. But yeah, no, just a brilliant film. Definitely encourage people to go watch it if they haven't seen it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you can, watch on Netflix because it is a Netflix original. But like I said, I really appreciate you coming on, Angus. But before we let you go, how can we find you online? You've obviously got a couple of socials and a website. How can we get in touch with you?
Cool. So my business is called ABVO Brisbane. You can Google it. If you want to follow me directly, you can get me on TikTok at Angus Brennan VO. And maybe it might convince me, if enough people follow, to start back up and do some videos. This year I am planning on getting back into the groove and posting more. So look forward to that.
Okay.
Yeah, ABVO and Angus Brennan VO is how you can get me.
Excellent. And we'll have those links for you, in the relevant channels and the description of this podcast as well. But Angus, that brings us to the end of this episode. I really appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate your advice as well. I'm going to take it on board and make this podcast the best it can be.
Awesome.
But look, I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope that you'll be able to come on again in future, because I really enjoyed our chat today.
Thanks, Jeremy. It's been a pleasure. Looking forward to it.